Welcome back to another episode of Dungeon Hammer, brought to you by One Mind Syndicate. I am your host, Gersh1, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
The Sound Alchemist.
It's also a creature.
And today we're going to be talking about why you should play Barbarian. Probably one of the most easy to play races or classes for a beginner, because he's basically just a murder hobo. But for the experienced player, he is one of the most interesting classes to play.
That doesn't redeem you.
Because of how you could really twist and give purpose to your. It's not easy giving purpose to your murder hobo. So as a barbarian. Role-playing a barbarian, I think, is a huge challenge that Docile Creature has taken and ran with it. And he can talk to you guys about the barbarian because he is part barbarian.
Yeah. For being a docile creature, this dude likes to rage.
I'd love to rage. Barbarian, best class in D&D 5e. It is. I have spoken. It's true. Let's talk about why.
Why?
Honestly, I agree.
Really?
Yeah, barbarians are pretty badass.
Have you played a barbarian?
Nope, but
you've wanted to.
Multiple times.
You should play a barbarian in the next campaign.
No,
we can
that's
talk about
beside
that
the
later.
point. Yeah.
Why are barbarians awesome? You two.
It reminds me of the Hulk.
Tell me what you think the best aspects of a melee fighter are.
You are in control of your damage and your hit output. Fuck the DM. I think the main purpose I would play a barbarian is because of the fact that I can say, fuck you, DM. I can do whatever I want.
I think that's more of a jab at the DM than why you like the barbarian.
I mean, like, if I were to say I want to be the perfect melee fighter, what do you guys think that fighter would need?
To multi-class into fighter.
No.
High
Warrior, then.
High damage output and multiple attacks.
Yes. Multiple attacks.
Yes. Okay. I'll just fill in the rest of the blanks that I expect you guys to say. Speed. We got to be quick. Zip around the battlefield to get to your opponents better. Get to the magicians in the back. Get to the archers in the back before they can shoot you to death.
Maybe. We've never had that. I just thought about that. That's actually a really cool mechanic that we've never experimented with in our...
Speed?
No, somebody like an archer in the back.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyway.
So, step 1, speed. Step 2, tankiness. How much damage can you take?
Yeah.
In a reasonable... and not die instantly. Without... Well, we'll get... And 3, damage output.
Yes.
How much damage can this dude do?
Because it makes no difference if you can get there and survive only to do like 4 damage.
Exactly. Most classes, I feel, are good at one or two of these things. Paladins, they can be good. They can be really tanky, or they can be really damage outputty. They're not really fast.
Okay.
Fighters, they're kind of mixed bags. You can kind of do whatever you want, but it's not usually all 3. Barbarians got it all. They're tanky.
I'll let you finish.
They're tanky. They got rage. Half damage from slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning.
Yeah.
Boom. Done. Don't wear a lot of heavy armor, but you don't need it. Take half damage. You can wear medium armor, though. You can also use shields, which is awesome. 2, speed. Unarmored movement. Plus 10 to the speed. At level 5, I think.
Damn.
So that's
level 5.
40 feet of movement if you're a normally sized person to start out with.
Yeah.
And then damage output. They're beasts in combat.
They are.
You can have advantage on every attack. You can the weapons that you can use are the biggest ones in the game. You got the rage damage. That's why I think as a melee character, best you can get in all 3 of those aspects.
Definitely. Well, I'm just going to agree with Docile Creature just because I've seen this in action. I think every time I've witnessed some type of melee encounter, the barbarian is usually the one that's leading the charge, that's taking the hits. Yeah.
I agree. But to counter that, when you played your paladin, you were able to call a mount, get to where you need to go quickly, and then if you hit, decide to use your smite for additional damage.
Right.
Which at that point, I think you can rival the berserker.
But
because that's exactly what you are as a barbarian. You're a berserker.
Yeah.
With a paladin, you're more
a holy warrior.
Yeah, logic is more your friend. instead of relying on instinct.
Here's where what you said is absolutely true, but I don't need a horse. I don't need a mount. My legs do it for me. I don't got to spend a spell slot summoning a steed. I don't got to spend gold on a horse. I got my legs, and I'll be up in your face.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine and dandy until you take an arrow to the knee.
Well, your horse can die.
Yeah, that's what would happen to me when I played my paladin. I saw that most of the time. I'm not going to say the DM. The monster would, or whatever creature we were fighting would kill my horse. Sometimes it wouldn't even be a combat situation. It would just be like, oh, your horse broke his leg. Why? Because you could summon him whenever you want. Well, not really. It's a 10-minute ritual, but yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was really annoying.
Just a barbarian with extra steps.
Yeah, when you put it that way, yes. Do you as a barbarian, do you use magic?
You can. There's certain subclasses that allow you to cast spells.
But is that just something else to hinder your ability to just run in there and smack hard?
Yes, because when you're raging, which you always want to do as barbarian, you can't cast spells. It's baked into the ability. Most of the spells you get as barbarians, even in the subclasses, they're utility spells. Something you wouldn't want to use in combat anyways. For example, the totem one, you could speak with animals and animal friendship, I believe, which are like you could use them in combat situations, I guess, but most of the time you're not going to. The tree that I'm currently playing is the Ancestral Guardian. And in a few levels, I think, I get to cast like augury and stuff like that, like divine spells. Like I'm speaking to my Ancestral Guardian patron and they're telling me things. So there's definitely a little bit of spell casting, but not much. And you don't have to have any depending on what tree you go down.
But it is the cool thing about the barbarian that I've seen you play is that it is very simplistic in that you don't need to worry about the magic stuff. Really, when a situation comes to you, it's you deal with it with your charisma, or you deal with it by hitting it over the head, right?
Over and over again.
So for a beginner in D&D, and somebody who just like gets off work, meets up with their buddies, and wants to play a cool murder hobo, the barbarian is really just a fun class to play.
Or one reason that I really love playing the barbarian is because you can be, if you can tell that your DM's kind of like, oh, there might be a trap here, there might be a big encounter here. As a barbarian, you don't give a fuck. I'm going to step into that trap because you know why? I'll survive.
I'm going to remind you next time that happens. Hey, Boagrius.
Hey, I'll do it. Don't worry, wizard. I'll go first. That's the barbarian's motto. If you want to be a trap-tripping, shit-starting character, just run into your opponent's faces, no regard to your own health. It's something that I personally love. I love being a risk-taking character. Someone just runs in. Oh, you hear someone scream for help? I'm running after them. Don't even know what's going on. I'm going to run right up to them because I know I can survive it. Then Barbarian is for you.
Yeah. Somebody who's just trying to hack and slash. It's really
That's
cool.
Another thing. We talked about a few weeks ago, the Warlock.
Yeah.
And how if you don't want to be spamming Eldritch Blast every turn, maybe it's not for you. And this is a testament to all rule melee characters. If you don't want to just say, oh, I run up and hit it with a sword over and over again, maybe the Barbarian isn't for you, because that's pretty much what you're going to be doing every round of combat. But you do so much damage that it's fun. You get to see the horror on the DM's face when you say 26 damage. It's like, what? Mm-hmm. That's right.
You take the power from the DM, which is the main reason that I do think that the Barbarian is like such a good class. You leave so little to chance. The only thing that you leave by that I mean it's really just your dice rolls. Mm-hmm. It's not it's not really what the DM is going to tell you how a situation plays out. It's the Barbarian is pretty badass because of that.
Yeah, it's like if you're dealing like 26 points of damage and you've hit this creature 4 times and it's not dead, then you know like something's off.
Fishy, something's fishy. There's favoritism here. The one thing about the Barbarian that I think you do really well at, and I think because originally I wanted to play the Barbarian and I probably would have sucked at this, is pulling yourself back from just hitting things right off the bat. And yes. I think that comes down to role playing. As a barbarian, you need to know, or you need to have some type of backstory or fluff as to why you're not just running up to everybody and smacking them over the head. You did a really good job with your character. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think that's just important for any character in general, is to, you don't have to play into the murdery side of your class. Like if I'm playing an assassin, I don't gotta assassinate everybody that I come across. Well, another reason I like Barbarians is because you can play the dumb, hide-wearing, animal-killing, like, brute.
Yeah.
But you can really kind of form it to be a bunch of different things. Like, I played a scholar. I bumped his intelligence up. I gave him a...
Scholar Barbarian?
The thing is, like, the name Barbarian is the name of the class, but the character didn't... If someone called him a barbarian, he'd be offended. He's not a brute. He's not some barbarian. He was a sage background. He got proficiency in Arcana, and he's a mage slayer, so he was trained to kill magic people.
Wow.
So he was a smart barbarian. You can do that because the only really stats that you need is strength and constitution, which constitution is important, but you can bump it down a little bit to bring the other skills up, which is what I did for intelligence. And it's a completely different flavor of barbarian because when the DM calls for an Arcana check, you're not going to expect the barbarian to be like, I got this. But when it is, it just makes your character so much cooler. And you can do that for charisma, wisdom, whatever flavor of barbarian you want to make. You can really customize it a lot, especially since all these sub classes for the character they branch pretty widely.
So you were low-key playing a Death Watch Space Marine. Because that's what Death Watch Space Marines are. They're supposed to just be really tough, but at the same time, they know about Xeno or alien races. And again, this goes back to my whole thing of like, if you're an experienced player, you need to know that at some point you have to add like fluff to your just amazing powers.
Definitely, because you can if you don't do that, you're kind of playing the same character every time you play a class.
The dumb brute.
Sound Alchemist has played a Warlock 2 or 3 times, and they've been widely different every time. It's not like you're just playing the same thing, different name, different race. And I've played a Barbarian 3 times, and they've been completely different every time because the classes are so customizable that if you want to change it up, then you can... a barbarian isn't the same across every gaming group.
Right.
You can customize it a ton.
Which is interesting because when you think barbarian, obviously what you go through is like the dumb brute. But
half orc with the great axe who just has animal pelts all over him, and it doesn't have to be that. It can be that, which can be cool if you want to go into the tropes, but it can be so much more.
Oh yeah. You can be drinking elixirs, and that's what gives you your rage ability instead of just being mad.
Yeah. Because that's kind of the one thing that kind of ties all of the barbarians together, is they all have rage, and that can be kind of it's kind of a bad thing. Like all my barbarians have to have anger problems, which is kind of a big part of a character. And sometimes when you don't want you want something different, you kind of gotta flavor it in a different way. You said you wanted to play a barbarian
all the time.
Why don't you?
Because of the magic. So I really like the idea of using magic to either help the party or to help myself during a combat situation. And as a barbarian, that shouldn't be. Like, you are a corn berserker. You're supposed to be hitting things over the head. And if you're not, then I feel like you're not playing the barbarian true to its barbarian roots.
Yep. So then let me ask you this, docile creature. Has there ever been a time when you're playing your barbarian up in combat and it's not getting you results? What do you do, since like your whole gimmick is to be in combat and hit things?
Well, he usually just relies on the DM.
Well, the only real times when the barbarian isn't effective is when your enemy is 300 feet in the air and you can't reach him.
Right. What do you do then? And luckily, there's been no winged enemies for us.
Yeah.
Because even if there's a dragon, it's got to come down to rest. It's going to rest right next to the barbarian.
Never going to happen. You really can't do much. This is one of the big intentional downsides of the barbarian is they don't have a lot of range capabilities. Mm-hmm. Like they can take longbows and stuff like that, but dex usually isn't what you want to be maxed out in as a barbarian. So this is kind of, you got to rely on magical items. Try to get magical items that can let you fly, let you teleport, so that you can get up in those things' faces, even if they're out of your reach.
Or rely on character building within your party and have somebody who is a magic user assist you on getting on the back of the dragon.
Yeah, because that's what happened in ours. We had a warlock with Dimension Door. I was like, yo, slingshot me up there. And then I rode a dragon for a while.
You were holding on for your life.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Dealing more than 500 points of damage and not killing the dragon. Yep. I'm not salty about that at all.
I can tell.
Yeah. So then what happens if, let's say, you're playing a whole party with no range capabilities?
Then your party has a big downside. That's just...
You just get picked off.
You have to find ways to alleviate those problems some way. Have an Aarakocra barbarian, because then...
Speaking of that, what is the best race to be a barbarian?
There's a few. I personally think that half-orc is hands and I don't know what the saying is, hands and feet
Sure.
above all the other races. Because their racial abilities are just made for a barbarian. For example, they get brutal critical, I believe, which is when you crit, you get an extra damage dice, which is something that the barbarians get eventually as well.
This is hilarious because he's trying to figure out what the feat does. He's saying it while he's trying to look for it.
Yes.
Because he knows it so well.
Yeah, he doesn't even need to look.
That's because they're so amazing. Why would you play anything else? Yeah, when you score a critical hit with a melee attack, you can roll one of the weapon's damage dice once additional time. So once you get to a high enough level, you're rolling all the damage dice. And usually, statistically, if you're not a half-orc, if you want to maximize your damage, you want to be using like a greatsword or a maul, which is 2d6. With a half-orc, you can use a great axe with a d12, because of this brutal critical, and then savage attacks is what it's called. You get a bunch of d12s, which is obviously better than d6s. Another reason is they get this thing called half-orc resilience, I believe.
Oh, is that when you go down?
Relentless endurance is what it's called. If you hit 0 hit points, you pop back up at 1, which is super good. Mm-hmm. I once had a barbarian. I would do it way differently now, but I was DMing for a barbarian who fell 1,000 feet off of a cliff. He raged before he hit the ground, so he took half bludgeoning damage, and then he's an orc. It wasn't enough to kill him outright after the damage, because for some reason in the DM's guide, the fall damage maxes out at something. So it was like...
Well, I mean, I guess you hit terminal velocity.
Yes, but it was not even enough to outright kill him. And since he's a half-orc, he popped up at one hit point. It's ridiculous.
That's pretty interesting, because it's like, let's say you have like a magic chest that's like in the deepest, darkest cavern. That doesn't matter. You're just going to jump in there.
It's like, I'm going to jump. It's like... And now I probably would have killed this character, because there's no one's going to survive falling 1,000 feet without magic. It's just not going to happen.
Right, and that's like your orcish side bringing you back, right?
Yes. So those are some really good abilities. They come with dark vision baked in, but most races do. They start with strength and con, which is your two best stats for barbarian. They're just perfect for barbarians, in my opinion. My second would probably be a Goliath or a Minotaur, because they're just big, beefy races, I think they both come with strength and con as well.
So you should never play like a halfling barbarian.
Not true. I actually think a halfling barbarian would be awesome. Not optimal, but I wanted to make a whirlwind barbarian where you basically have like two hand axes and you just like spin around in combat trying to hit as many dudes as you can as a little halfling. And also, the cool thing about the halfling is like, if you have a bigger character, be like, throw me.
Yes.
I only walk 25 feet. Throw me into combat.
And I'm just gonna Wolverine Colossus combo.
Yep, exactly.
That's what I wanted to do with the Goblin. A Goblin Barbarian just sounds badass.
It does.
He's basically a Gretchen who's a little more aggressive than the other Gretchen. Yeah, too bad that.
Can you imagine like your party meeting up for the first time, having their first combat? You don't know what everybody's class is, and I'm like, the goblin's like, I'd like to rage. What?
Awesome. Why would the goblin say that in combat? Like, you don't just say, I want to rage, and then you rage. Like, being fully immersed in the game.
Why you gotta call me out like that?
I mean, it could be just a Gretchen who wants to personify his own movements. They are that dumb.
You speak in the third person.
Exactly.
Yeah. That would be fun to play a goblin character who's a barbarian who speaks in the third person because he is a little dumb.
Yeah.
He's, yeah.
That'd be a really cool, interesting, like, party combination of having a little goblin and a orc.
Yeah. Have the orc wizard and the goblin barbarian. I'm down. Let's do it.
No. Flip the
Make
roles.
that into a 90s sitcom, and I'd watch it.
Yeah. What was I gonna say?
You were gonna tell us about the downfalls that you've experienced as a barbarian.
Yeah. Mostly the range, the lack of magic, the lack of utility that they have. You really have one gimmick, that's to run and hit people hard. It's an awesome gimmick, but
so it is something that you have to rely on for the party. But one thing that I have noticed is that sometimes charisma is not your best.
You're right. So the mental abilities usually aren't your strong suit unless you want to build in that direction.
But then that's taken away from...
That's taking away a whole pillar of the game.
Yeah.
Like, you're good in combat, you can be good at exploration, but the social side with NPCs and stuff like that, you can definitely be not necessarily lacking, because being dumb is an entertaining thing as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to achieve things, if you want to persuade, if you want to deceive, it's not going to be as easy unless you, like, just the most traditional barbarian's not going to be easy for you. I definitely run into that problem with the one I'm playing now. I'm not statistically not the most charismatic or not the most intelligent, so you're going to struggle in that direction. When the party's investigating and stuff like that, you're kind of just standing there scratching your head because you're not going to be helping out, or you're giving the help action.
Right, which is strange because, like, I feel like you're the face of the party.
In our particular party.
Yeah, and yet your charisma isn't, like, where a normal face would be.
Yeah, it's just a little above average. And the stats can only do so much for you. Like, if you have a bad intelligence, that doesn't mean you're not intelligent. It's just you're not, in most ways you're not. Like, you're not book smart in most ways. Doesn't mean you don't know things. Like, I feel like the barbarian I'm playing now is a slightly above average charisma, but he still likes to talk to people. He likes to interact with people. Even if he's not good at it, he still likes to do it. So just because your stats are bad doesn't mean you can't be decent, or
which again kind of humanizes you, because if you were just like this OP brute in combat, it's like, why are we hanging around with this guy when, like, he can kill us?
Yeah.
But if he's got more of, like,
he's got a heart of gold.
Exactly, there you go. He'll be the Grinch this Christmas.
That's right.
But then so if you are going to choose a barbarian, you also need to kind of feel out what the party, and specifically the DM, and what type of campaign he wants to run. Because if he is going to run a murder mystery type situation where you are going to rely a lot on, like, asking people for clues and trying to figure out exactly what happened and not just barging in and trying to kill all the ghosts, then maybe a barbarian wouldn't be a good choice for you to play.
Yeah, definitely. Those kind of games aren't necessarily tailored to what you're going to want to be doing.
Yeah, so feel it out, because if you do start as a barbarian, you're like, yeah, it feels good, but it seems like other members of the party are getting more of the, or they're benefiting towards the progression of the campaign, maybe multi-class, which is something that you recently did.
Yes. I took a level in Paladin. It was mostly for story purposes, because optimally, quote unquote,
you should never,
well, I'd probably want to go fighter if I wanted to be the best in combat. But story-wise, I've kind of wanted to play a campaign where I make decisions leveling up based on the story, not based on a preset plan. So that's kind of what I'm doing with this guy. But yeah, fighter is probably the best multi-class, because taking a few levels that you get action surge. If you get to level 3, you get champion. You crit on 19s and 20s with advantage on every attack. It's ridiculous. I've played that character before. Is another reason I'm not doing it again.
Too overpowered.
It's a lot of fun. Like, critting on 19s and 20s and advantage. You're going to be critting way more often. Roll 46 every attack. That's 86 when you crit. Oh, it feels so good. It feels so good to be that powerful.
So if you are listening and you're kind of on the fence on what to play, and you are the type of player that just plays Necrons and is wants to be OP all the time, a barbarian, a barbarian fighter combo is the way to go for you. But understand that you're going to lose friends because it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
Other than those downfalls of no magic and lack of like just social bits, what other flaws have you run into with the barbarian?
I feel like it's hard to imagine, like we were talking about customizing your barbarian and how it can be a lot of different things. I feel like it's not as easy to visualize those, like how to branch into different cool ideas than, like we were talking about the warlock. All the cool ideas are almost already baked into your choices, into your path features, into your subclasses. There's so many different things you can role play out. Barbarian, there's not as much of that. You get the rage mechanic, so you're an angrier character, unless you want to reskin it into something else. That's kind of a big part of your character. You're going to be a melee based, so it's kind of points you in a direction that's less obvious about how to customize.
Right, because fighting, there's only so much you can do to make it unique. Like if I hit this guy with a sword is the same thing as saying I hit this guy with my fists.
And you can only reflavor how you hit a guy with a sword so many times.
Right. Mm-hmm. My sword's black, my sword's blue, my sword's glow in the dark. Sure. It's all the same thing. You're still hitting a guy.
Yes.
Yeah. You're still hitting a guy with a sword, regardless of how you do it or what it looks like.
But, I mean, I think we've talked about this before in other episodes. Barbarian is actually a good class. Something I really want to try is to have a whole party of one class. I feel like Barbarian, Fighter, Rogue, Wizards, those are all really good classes, because Cleric too. There's enough customization there that make it different. Some of the subclasses for Barbarian, we got the Totem Warrior, which is probably, if you want to be the most tankiest Barbarian you ever want to be.
Because you get like wild shape, can't you?
No, not wild shape, but you pick a totem animal, and at third level you can do bear totem, which usually when you rage you get resistance from slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning. And if you go bear, you're resistant to all damage except psychic.
Jeez,
it's ridiculous, and that's at third level. So most people, if you want to never want to take any damage, you go that route. I've never done it before, and I probably wouldn't even if I picked totem with a warrior, because just doesn't seem that fun to me. But one that I have played is the Berserker, or what is it called? Frenzied Berserker. And you can actually attack on the bonus action that you take levels of exhaustion every time you rage. So it's definitely a downside there, but it can be a lot of fun. There's the Zealot, if you want to be a more holy barbarian. There's the Ancestral Guardian, which I'm playing now, which was you have like ancestral spirit that guides you and helps you out in combat. The Storm Herald, if you want to have a more elemental effect to your rages. There's definitely a lot of customization in the subclasses, but they're not as obvious. Like the character choices aren't as different from each other as other classes.
Because whether you get your powers from the elements or from your ancestors,
you're still angry. You're still hitting people with a big weapon.
Right, you're still gonna hit somebody.
Yeah. Whereas Warlock, for example, you can be Blade Lock, where you're more close combat. You can be a more wizardy one. You can have the cool
the companions, like the
familiar.
Yeah.
Now, as a DM, what recommendations do you have for them when they have a party of multiple barbarians, or like one barbarian that seems to kind of fall into a cyclical, like, okay, what do you do now? I'm gonna hit the creature. What type of combat encounters have you used, and have you seen used on you that are fun?
I feel like you know that your barbarians are going to hit hard. Yeah. So use things with more experience or more hit points if you want them to survive. High AC, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Make your character or your NPCs, your enemies, smart. Like make them fight smarter. Like if they can tell this guy's gonna get up in their faces, make some of them ranged.
Yeah.
Make an Aarakocra archer, an Aarakocra wizard up in the air that the Barbarian can't really get to if you're having problems. Because when I DM'd my first campaign, the Barbarian was a big problem because he just mowed down everything. And everything I threw at them died really quickly. Mm-hmm. So I had to kind of think, and you can turtle up your guys and like magical auras and like shield walls and stuff like that to make, if your Barbarian wants to get up close, they're gonna be taking a lot of attacks. Or the way to take out a Barbarian is magic, honestly, because most of the time they're not gonna be resistant to it, and their saves aren't gonna be the greatest, like their mental saves.
Yeah,
that's the way you want to take it down. If you have a problem challenging the Barbarian,
is it easy to charm a Barbarian?
Yeah,
use him as an ally and attack its own party members.
Absolutely. I was in a campaign where there was a TPK because the DM charmed the Barbarian, and the Barbarian just proceeded to kill all of us.
Jeez. You're really making me want to play Barbarian now.
It's so fun.
It seems so much fun.
Yeah.
Now, what other ways? Well, so then it really boils down to different interesting combat encounters in order for you, as a DM, to give to a Barbarian. Outside of the combat encounters, what have you, as a Barbarian, kind of have had fun with? Since you are just basically a character built for combat.
Right.
As a player, I love being good in combat. So Barbarians are perfect for me. Like I like being effective in combat, and Barbarians that's pretty much all they're effective at is in combat.
Mm-hmm. So anything else is like whatever to you.
Well, no, I like all aspects of the game probably equally, but I really like being good in combat, useful in combat. Like, that's maybe why I don't really like wizards. I do really like wizards, but the utility-ness of the wizards kind of doesn't speak to me as much as Barbarian, because you're not doing as much damage, you're not rolling all those dice. Mm-hmm. It just feels powerful. Like, I feel like I'm playing 40k when I'm rolling 46 for damage every turn.
Yeah. I mean, you're essentially a one-man army.
You can be.
For a very because the more you talk about it, it is very like one situational though. You are very like built for combat. You're gonna kill things, and that's about it. So if you ever want to do a campaign, or if you're ever in a campaign that is not about like being the warrior,
right?
It seems kind of
because if you are in a campaign that's more about like puzzles and like solving riddles and stuff like that, it doesn't matter how hard you can hit if you can't escape like the dungeon you're in.
Right, and there's been a lot of campaigns I've seen like on different like YouTube channels that have been beyond the fantasy warrior adventuring type of thing. So like more like being inside of a high school and stuff like that.
Sure, yeah.
That the Barbarian wouldn't really.
Yeah, I mean,
you can to play.
You can build a Barbarian to be better in social or intelligence-based situations, but it's never going to be. You're never going to be the best at that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's just not the class for that kind of thing.
Which seems like another topic that we should get into like later on too. Other games other than just like the adventure.
Fighting the main bad guy.
Yeah. But for that purpose, for the initial purpose, that's why I feel like Barbarians are so good for beginners.
I agree.
In D&D. Like, because the D&D, you want to be the hero going out and adventuring, and I think the Barbarian is probably one of the best ones.
Yeah, right. And it's, for a new player, like, sit down here. You don't have to worry about armor class that much. Take this big weapon, hit that thing. You don't have to prepare spells. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Don't have to pick anything. You just hit it with a stick until it's dead.
Don't have to worry about like talking to the guard.
If you're a brand new player, you might not want to jump into role playing situations, so you can just kind of sit in the back and watch
and that's
the more experienced players do it.
Yeah, because like most people when they come in, they want their character to be established, kind of like how we mentioned. And playing a Barbarian, it's the best way to feel very OP.
Absolutely, yeah. You can, because you level 1, you get rage, which is really cool because it's what your whole class is based off of.
So let's say you remove rage, why still play a Barbarian?
I've always liked the aesthetic of an unarmored, huge weapon wielding warrior. And I still think the reckless attacks would be really good. You definitely would not be as tanky. It would take a lot from the class. You do extra damage when you rage. You take less damage. You're better at strength checks. It would take a lot because, like I said, the whole class is based around that. I don't know if it'd be as good. I don't know if I would still love it because
that's that cherry on top.
Yeah, it's the heart of the class is the rage.
Really. The meat and potatoes.
Yeah, not the bread and butter.
Yeah, or the cherry.
The bread and butter is the reckless attacks. So good.
Yeah, I think you convinced both of us. Well, I already wanted to play Barbarian, but now you convinced the Sound Alchemist to try out Barbarian.
So when are we going to do this whole party of Barbarians?
That sounds like a lot of fun. This sounds like a topic that we should get into. We're having an entire party just of one class. Yeah. So for you viewing at home, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Comment down below. Let us know why you love the Barbarian or why you hate the Barbarian.
And also let us know what, if we do a party of race or class episode, what classes do you want us to see? You want us to talk about?
Or not assassins, the rogue.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun.
Party of rogues.
And then we could all talk in basically code.
Thieves camps.
Yeah.
Just write little hobo symbols and just show them to each other.
I hope you guys enjoyed. Next week we're gonna come at you with another podcast. Remember that these go out every Thursday. Tell your friends, and thank you so much for the support that you guys have been showing us. I know this is a little different than the 40K content, but you guys have been pretty positive. So thank you. And stay tuned for more D&D content. This was Gershwan,
the Sound Alchemist,
Does a Creature,
and we are out of here.
Oh, I used to put my